Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we are more than thrilled to be talking to the creatives and the talent responsible for the amazing movie Till, about the life of Mamie Till, an American icon, and her son, Emmett. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to the AAFCA members on the call today, starting with our facilitator, Katia Woods in Philadelphia, Samuel Leggett in Washington, D.C., Janita Davis in Denver, Reggie Pounder in Chicago, Rhonda Rasha Penrice in Atlanta, Jill Monroe in Los Angeles, Philippe Patterson in D.C., and Carolyn Hines in Toronto. I'm going to get off and let you guys do what you do so well, and I'll see you on the other side.
I got a letter today from Auntie Lizzie. She said Bo's been working the fields. I can't imagine. Oh, he just doesn't understand how different things are in Mississippi. Are you listening?
Yes.
Be small down there.
Like this?
Emmett never thought anything would happen to him.
Meet the mommy, Simmy!
Ow!
He just wanted to go on vacation and have fun with his cousins. But if my son could just get his feet back onto the Chicago soil, he'd be one happy kid. I don't know why I said that.
I want to talk to you about that boy.
They've come for you.
It's hard to describe what a mother knows. The first thing I noticed when I became a mother was that my hands were busy all the time. My hand knew him with my eyes closed, just like I know his laughter in a crowded room. It's the same thing when you know all of someone. This was my boy, Emmett Till.
The body of Emmett Lewis Till has been found dead.
Can I at least just fix him up a bit?
No, they have to see it for themselves.
You tell me, Mamie, how is risking your life gonna help them?
Those pictures of your son change people's lives.
I can't look, Mamie. We have to. The lynching of my son has shown me that what happens to any of us, anywhere in the world, had better be the business of us all.
Hi, you guys. I'm Reggie Pounder, the real critic out of Chicago. And this story, obviously, from a Chicago perspective, is a very, very important one. There's been some statues and scholarships, and a lot of things have been happening since or around the film. My question is for Chenotia and Keith, from a writing perspective. How were you guys able to figure out what was important? What was the keep in this story, given the fact that she was just such a phenomenal woman?
I knew that keeping the story firmly centered on Mamie's point of view and her emotional and literal perspective, that was going to be my guiding light in figuring out what the audience sees with her or not. And so my thought process was, if Mamie is not experiencing it, or if she's not discovering it, if it's not tied to her arc as a character, then it's not in there. Like, we don't see it, because we have to keep it from her point of view. And so that was my guiding light, and helped me really focus, and also focus in the edit too, because we also cut quite a few things in the edit room. And, those are the conversations I had with my editor, Ron, just like, if we're veering away from Mamie and her arc and her We got to kind of.
And for me, Reggie, that's a great question because, you know, I'm coming into this world from a documentarian point of view. And so Chenoya was there to weave out the story itself, you know, the things that needed to be seen on camera versus what I wanted to be seen. And considering that I'm also a mentee to Mother Mobley herself, you know, everything to me that she had done, it was important to get on screen, but that's not how this world works. And so Chenoya was able to carve out that story in a great way, which you were able to see. And so that was quite helpful, you know, just getting a perspective on, you know, our protagonist that's going to be telling the story and what should be on screen and what should not. And so I think we did a spectacular job doing that.
I will agree with that, and thank you for that insight. I thank you both for that.
Hi, Jill Monroe, Access to the Life. This question is for Chenoya and Keith. When you were putting together the story, most of us feel that we know to a certain degree Emmett Till's story, and by extension, Mamie's story, but we learned so much here. So for you as creatives putting together her story, what are aspects of her life that you learned about through this process that you were unfamiliar with that was exciting for you to share with the audience?
Before the producers approached me about this film, I had never heard of Dr. T.R.M. Howard or the community of Mound Bayou. And I was really saddened by that. And I think that Dr. T.R.M. Howard is an unsung hero of the civil rights movement. And he deserves a movie on his own right, you know. But that was one of the biggest like things that blew my mind. It's like, oh my God, and the community of Mound Bayou, the history of Mound Bayou. And so, and also I learned so much about Mamie. I mean, there's so many of us think we know the story, but most of us don't know about who Mamie was and her very specific, incredible journey after her son's lynching, and who she was in the private versus the public, you know, and who Emmett was, you know, because he's often relegated to a black and white image of a lynched body, but he was a person. And so I learned a lot about who he was and who Mamie was, and the ecosystem that surrounded them, that included the community of Mound Bayou and Dr. T.R.M. Howard, and learning more about Murley and Medgar beyond, you know, the kind of like highlights that were sometimes not always taught in history classes.
And for me, Jill, it's maybe a shock to everyone. I didn't know that much about Mother Mobley like I thought I did. I knew the elder, the most wiser, you know, the elder Mamie Till Mobley. I didn't know the 33-year-old woman that Danielle brilliantly plays in the film. And so for me, it was an emotional journey for myself, rediscovering my mentor. And so I thought I knew her. I mean, we talked about her journey. You know, I have tapes and tapes with her talking to me about her journey, but, you know, getting it on page was quite a struggle for me at first. And that was because I didn't know the woman that I thought I knew. So I had to re-educate myself about this woman. And I keep saying 33 years old because I don't think people realize between the death of her son and the trial of 1955, it was within 30 days. She had to deal with all of this within a 30-day window. And so again, 33 years old, I could have never imagined being in a position like that, anyone being in a position right now. And so it was rediscovery for me. And it was emotional because, remember, I knew the woman. And so, it made me understand her a lot more and made things clear in terms of the decisions, the calculated, let me be clear, the calculated decisions that was made by her.
Mm-hmm. Hello, this is Samuel from JVS Media Productions. I had the honor of checking this out at New York Film Festival, this powerful film. This question is for Danielle and Chenoya. One of the most heartbreaking scenes is the viewing of the body, the slowly moving and just feeling out the body and the realization. For Danielle, from an emotional standpoint, there's so many different ranges of emotions you display with just your body language. And I commend you for that. But what were the challenges with that for you specifically as an actress? And then for you, Chenoya, what was it about that scene? Because it seemed like there was a transition that happened for Mamie in that one moment. And I feel like the way you wrote it, it was very specific. And I wanted you kind of both to speak towards it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll dive. That was the scene that we actually did a director session for. So we've been, or I've been dealing with that in various, modalities for a long time. The tension rides the whole way, but that's, the one scene that you're like, oh, well, this is the day, this is the day. The difficulties is just to go through, is to have the experience. Chenoya initially for that director session gave me, and I hadn't read the book in totality yet, Death of Innocence, but she gave me an excerpt of that, of Mamie's description of what that experience was like, about going into it with a kind of, not scientist, but like a distance approach, because if she did not, then she would not have been able to finish, and she had to do it alone because, or else they weren't going to let her do anything else alone. And so it's really just having that the feeling, the experience of it. She was trying to see the memory. She's having memories, not to see who he was, to remember who he was in that whole experience, trying to break down myths about what happened to his body, trying to recall, these knees that connect to her lineage, or this happening where he walked to, the store to get something or to pay bills for her. This is a body that was filled with life and did things together, individually and as a family. And so that's what that reckoning is, and always underlying that, it wasn't just a certain kind of sadness, it was a building up of intent and getting to that intent, which was driven by a certain kind of rage, and rage looks all kinds of ways. And that's not something that she got to evince publicly always. So that's what Chenoya and I always talked about, the public and private nature of who she was. And this is a very, very, very private endeavor, a private happening. And so, it's just releasing. I've been talking about release and mourning a lot. It's something that, as an American society or global society, that we haven't quite had the experience to do together. And so that's what that experience is. And I think people get the opportunity to recognize what a certain kind of breaking open a well experience that is. And it's just that hard. It's just that damn difficult. I don't know how to explain it any further.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say. I mean, that whale, like, the scene that precedes that, there is, the train station, where she's also crying. Danielle and I talked extensively about what is the emotional and psychological difference between Mamie's crying in the train station versus when she's looking at Emmett's body. And that word release was something that we came back to quite often, where at the train station, it is a guttural, visceral experience, but then in the funeral home, it is a release and then a decision. And, directorially, my approach to that scene was to have the camera be a humanizing lens as opposed to an objectifying, voyeuristic lens. So, I wanted to center Mamie's emotional experience seeing her son's body. So that's why we begin the scene with a composition where the table is obstructing Emmett's body. And we're just preserving that private emotional experience Mamie is having with her son. And then when we do slowly see parts of Emmett's body, it is with Mamie. And we're seeing that the love and the tenderness and the reconnection that she's having with her son's body and with her son. And so that, as opposed to a more kind of distant, objective kind of look at that is dehumanizing, you know? And so that was always my approach. And editorially, my editor and I decided that we were going to hold off seeing Emmett's face and the full body until we're in the church. And then we try to replicate that experience of having this, like, the world see and receive and experience seeing his body. And so, yeah, so I knew that I wanted it to be humanizing, and I also wanted it to be sparing yet effective.
Yeah, one of the most powerful scenes I've seen this year. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Janita Davis from the Black Cape. To say this movie was a lot is an understatement, but I was imagining what it was like for all of you on set. This is a mental health type of question. How did you all get up in the morning and prepare for the day? And how did you come down at the end? After, especially in those moments and those scenes that Danielle just described and that Chenoya, you just described. This question is for everybody.
Well, I'll say with that scene, I had told the crew ahead of time, we're going to shoot it in 2 takes. No matter what we get, it has to be 2 takes because I don't want to put Danielle through that more than 2 takes. And there were a couple scenes where that was the directive, and that was a way that I wanted to show care for the actors. You know, Danielle especially, you know, she literally gives her mind, body, spirit, soul to the performance, and I wanted to be very mindful and protective of that. And we had an on-set therapist who was available to the cast and the crew, and it was such an invaluable resource. And the parents of all the children, particularly Jalen's mom, Miss Ema, who's as part of the family. She was there in a critical emotional support system. And I've shared this story before, so I'm going to share it again, Jalen. But there was when we were shooting the scene where Emmett is abducted, after a take or 2, Jalen had asked for a hug from his mom. And I just stopped everything, and he got a hug from his mom. And if he would have told me that he didn't want to shoot any more takes, we wouldn't have, you know. And so I always wanted to prioritize the emotional well-being and the humanities of the cast and the crew. And also Danielle and I talked a bit about ahead of shooting, you know, where in the shooting schedule would you be ready to shoot the scene in the funeral home? You know, and I wanted her to tell me what is best for her performance-wise. So that's from my perspective. I'm sure everybody else has their contributions.
We laughed.
And we laughed.
We joked. We cut up.
Yes.
I sang gospel music, and I'm not a gospel singer. Like, you Black experience, it calls for Black humor, Black levity. And we had that. We had that. And we had community.
Yes.
Nobody's doing it alone.
Yes.
You know? And that kind of critical care that Chenoya is talking about, that was around the whole aura and vibe of the production. So we knew we had a mission. We were on a mission. We have an intention, a rich intention, but you have to have fun and joy along the way.
Yes. Bring the levity. Whoopi would cut up in between takes. She was hilarious. We had chocolates, you know. I mean, yeah, it's yeah.
It was joy.
You know, I always remember there was, every time to show up to set, it was the joy was the word, like that was printed on the sign, to the set of joy, or to joy set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was really just like a conscious as well as subconscious reminder that could also be a part of making a film. You know what I mean? So it was
That's
just
also part of the film too. There is still joy and love and community,
absolutely,
you know, alongside the inherent sadness of parts of the story, you know?
Yeah, so it carried over is what I'm saying. It was present.
Yeah.
With Jalen, you want to go?
Oh, well, yeah, she pretty much hit it right on the nail. You know, my mom is my biggest support system, so she wouldn't allow any sadness because she is a grade A mother. You know, and it was a process for the both of us though, because as much as I was, you know, in that headspace getting ready for it, she's seen me as, you know, her son, you know, going into this, and now that, you know, kind of put her in that mindset. But we had each other as we always have. And yeah, you know, just being a kid at the end of the day. And she's hilarious. I'm gonna tell you, this girl right here, this girl Danielle, she's an amazing
This
actress.
woman,
This woman, I'm sorry.
brown woman.
But she has like 5 personalities that you will get to meet. Like they're 5 of them, and she's hilarious. And then Chinoye, she laughs and makes us all laugh. And you know, everybody just has their own personality that I really, really would like to, you know, emulate going down the line.
Okay, Lynn.
For me, from the producer standpoint, I've been in this space of celebrating and mourning at the same time. Again, I knew Mother Mobley extremely well. This was her dream to get a story like this on the big screen. She wanted her story told. And to witness Danielle's performance and everyone's performance on this film was an emotional roller coaster for me. In fact, that I don't talk about this much, but I'm just gonna say it here. But when Danielle did the viewing scene, I don't know, they may have told some members of the cast what happened. I just broke down. I completely broke down because all I ever wanted to do was to resurrect my mentor, and Danielle was able to do it. But it was also very hard for me to see my friend go through this tragedy once again, because I feel that Danielle, she was, and to witness that, and you know, all the conversations that I had with her, now seeing it for myself on screen taking place, I started second guessing if it was the right thing for us to do, because I had never witnessed those feelings that was coming over me before. And it was done so well. I mean, you could have heard, it was storming that day. I don't know if everybody remember, it was storming. It was cold, it was storming, it was raining. And we were all under this producer's tent. And you could hear a pin drop in the middle of a storm. That's how quiet it was when Danielle actually did this scene. And I had chills all over my body. Everybody's looking at me. I had to get up and walk away. But I say this to say, you know, all Mother Mobley ever wanted was this story to be told on the right way. She always said to me, you don't need creative licensing, you just need to tell the story, because that's where everyone else had failed. People have been trying to do this film, I don't know if you know this, for 67 years. 47 years for Mother Mobley herself. You know, even after her son's death in 1955, she had an opportunity to produce a film. She actually had 2 film deals right after his death, but it was never, the film was never made. All the way up to her passing, this has been her fight. On one end, justice for Emmett, on the other end, making sure that the story is told to a broader audience. She wanted it on the big screen. We were able to do that, and I'm just so, you know, so happy that this team came together to make that happen, because it's another promise for me fulfilled.
Hi, Carolyn Foster. Here's What Happened and Carolyn Talks podcast. Thank you so much for making this film. This is such a poignant and very important film. And this is a question for everyone on the panel. I'm going a bit from the question you just answered about mental health and about the cast and the crew. Can you tell me about any discussions that any of you had with each other, and as well with the extras on the film, about not only Mamie's story and Emmett, but how this story of Emmett Till led to not only what was one of the most, I guess you could say, effective events that led to the civil rights movement, which to me has never really ended, because Black people in North America, especially in America, are still fighting for their civil rights, and they're still fighting to be seen and as human beings, like fully evolved and fully realized human beings. And one of the scenes that really hit home for me, how films like Till, as well as other films in setting the civil rights era and even in slavery, is how every Black person in North America, every Black person in America can relate to Mamie's story and Emmett's story on some emotional level, because all Black people are affected by racism and anti-Blackness and the violence that comes with that. So can you talk about the scenes with the extras and how you dealt with that personally and as well as a family and a group? Because the scene at the church with the extras, I just had the thought that so many of those people there would have been alive during this moment. They would have been alive because some of them were older Black people. So it couldn't have been easy to just go through that experience on a film set and just reliving moments that everyone would have had unfortunately experienced, such as having the talk, because what happened to Emmett has what launched the whole idea of having the talk with Black boys.
Well, that day that we shot that scene, I believe Ms. Deborah Watts was there. She, right?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, and who is a cousin, who's cousin to Mamie. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe she spoke and shared a few words with everyone when we were shooting. And the experience of that was palpable, you know, and for everyone, all the extras, the cast, the crew, to hear from a family member. And I think that was a really galvanizing experience. It really kind of reminded us of, you know, purpose and intention. And it was, I mean, for me, it was soul enriching. You know, when we shot the Harlem rally scene, there was definitely a moment where I you know, I gave a little rousing speech to remind people of what this is about and how we, you know, I believe it was mostly Black extras, and just like reminding us that our joy is a form of resistance. This film is a form of resistance, and that we're all part of a legacy or that is being represented in this film. And so just reminding people of purpose and energizing people. And I think that I felt a community amongst the extras and a community that was really rooted in purpose. You know, I felt like people who did this really wanted to do this and really felt the power and importance of doing it.
For me, when there were times I would be alone at the producer's booth, and cast members as well as crew would walk over to me and tell me why they took on this project. And that was the quite moving moments for me throughout this whole process, was that we actually had like-minded people who understood the production of what we wanted to produce for the world. They understood the importance of telling this story. And so everyone that's involved, and you just reach out to some of these people, they would tell you why they took on this project. And that's, you know, that experience for me was great and overwhelming at the same time, because I had like-minded people working on this production. It wasn't just a job for them. You know, everyone put their heart and soul to tell this story, and that really came through at the end of the day. And so, you know, that was a wonderful experience for me, because, you know, I'm a little biased. This has been part of my world for a very long time, this story, you know, since I was 10 years old. And now finally being able to tell a historic story and become a part of this history in a way, because we're all a part of history now for making this film, is truly amazing. I mean, people don't really think about that. So we were all touched, and all the people that I spoke with had their own personal reason why they joined this project in particular.
Hi, Katia Woods with Couple Social and the Philadelphia Tribune. My question is specifically for Danielle and John. There's a very poignant moment in the film where they talk about, you know, the two of them are talking about, she sees the gun, she's asking, you know, why didn't he try to use, you know, more force in order to protect Emmett? Can you talk a little bit about, because it, you know, when he said it was either going to be yours or one of mine, it shows you the severity of the situation that Black people were in. It was a lose-lose. Can you talk a little bit about how the two of you filmed that and the approach that you took? Because again, it was, as a parent, I empathize with both sides.
It's really a John Douglas question, because, you know, Mamie knows, right? Like there's that awareness that this is a violent situation either way it goes, but you can't help but to feel a greater sense of loss because it was her child. It's a conundrum either way. I mean, the greater hand of that scene of that difficulty kind of rested with Uncle Mose, I feel, because the rage is there for both of them, but their choice had to be done by Uncle Mose. So
yeah, I certainly thought going into it that it's one of those things where there is a psychological effect of either race hatred or systemic racism. And I certainly think as it relates to the Black man in those times and even in these times, that it's an emasculating experience. And so for me, going from the abduction scene, which I think we did that before, didn't we do that before we did this, me and Danielle by the river? Yeah. So for me, I brought those feelings of what that felt like. And even in my own mind, I would say, yeah, why wasn't more done? Why wasn't the gun used? But the argument will always be there. And I think people will maybe first say, yeah, I would have done something. I think most people might look at that situation and said, if it was me, it would have ended differently. I would have used my gun. But the reality of the situation is this type of racism puts Black life and Black bodies in a life and death situation with any encounter with white people. I had said before, it could have been a totally benign thing. 2 white men show up at my doorstep. They could have been there for a number of reasons. But what I understand, or what hopefully most Black people understand when that happens, is that this is a life and death situation. And as much as I think Mose feels shame, guilt, embarrassment, betrayal, he betrayed his niece, he betrayed Emmett, he has all those feelings, but I think he also knows, what was I to do? If I would have said, no, you can't take Emmett, they would have killed us all. If I would have said, take Emmett with the hopes that they will bring Emmett back, maybe beat him up, but not kill him, but bring him back, that's a gamble. And the whole idea is whenever these situations happens, these kinds of situations, there's all these calculations that the Black person has to make about their own life and death and their own family, their own community, what can be done. So that's the kind of pity to me of the whole scene, is that you're trapped. You're just trapped. What can you do in that situation? And the one thing I didn't want to do was be indignant about my niece's, Danielle, Mamie's loss of Emmett. I could not try to defend that and say, what did you think I was going to do? I had to have some feeling for Mamie's situation. And it's like an insoluble argument. There's nothing I could say. There's nothing I could do. It's a Sophie's choice kind of a situation. If it wasn't going to be Emmett, it would have been me and my family. If it wasn't me and my family, it would have been Emmett. The fact that the Black body, Black mind, Black psyche must look at all interactions with white people as life and death, that's the shame of the whole thing. And so I was just trying to present an argument that would make sense, be very difficult to understand, but would hopefully on some level make sense. And maybe there's a little ambiguity there, and perhaps the audience that's watching it could understand both sides of the equation. Moses' side of the equation, as well as Mamie's side of the equation. We're both right.
Hello guys, my name is Philippe Patterson. I am the lead contributor to Taj Mag. My question is for Danielle and Jalen. It's actually a 2-part question. What scene, or is there a scene where you two felt like you had captured the embodiment of Mame and Emmett? And also, what did you learn from yourself? What did you learn about yourself after you completed the film?
I don't know if you feel embodiment. I mean, I'm just having the experience. I can't say what it is. I know that Chenoya is looking at something, that everybody is witnessing something, that we're having this experience together. I know Keith is having a specific experience, right? But we stay rooted in the life, in the storytelling, in the experience of it. And that was most important in portraying Mamie. And what did I learn? I'm constantly learning. I'm still learning. The conversation this is the bigger part, right? For me, the sharing and the engagement with folks and coming to, I'm to learn about the intimacy of their relationship, to learn about the family dynamic, reading her book. Those things were significant because that explained the life that was beforehand. The way she didn't discipline him because she felt a certain, like, I know those things, and those things are why she treated him a certain way and why she relented to him going to Mississippi. Those things are really beautiful. And what's important is that we have to understand that there are lives and families behind victims' names. We know a name, we say a name incessantly, but what does it mean to be the person who carries that legacy forward? And so what stays with me is the experience of knowing of learning who they were in some capacity. People don't know this, and when they presume that they know the story. And so that's big for me. And and still learning new things every day. Keith tells a new thing, Chenoya tells a new thing in the making of the story, or in learning about other little intricacies about who they were as people. Those are, revelatory gems every day as we continue to share.
Right. So, all the scenes are kind of, they are everything, that I want them to be. At least I can speak for, my part. A lot of people ask me, how did you embody that character, and I feel like with this project, it's important not to, I know it's a habit because that is where we are in, Hollywood, that it's a character that you're portraying, but when it's a human being, it's not somebody that, a creative mind came up with in their notes. It's somebody who actually lived a life, who had ideals, who had nightmares, dreams. So of course, there's that learning of the personality traits, which I did, but I was also 14 at the time. I got to learn that me and Emmett weren't unlike, and same goes for a lot of, kids out there, especially when you're growing and you're curious, and the lightheartedness. So it was very easy for that to shine through. And as far as, what I've learned about it, I've always been I like to think of myself as a exceptionally conscious 15-year-old, exceptionally conscious teenager. If an adult would like to engage in conversation, I hope them comfortable to know that they can, because but a lot of my life has just been my 15-year-old life, yes, has just been, doing my daily, wake up in the morning, do me. A lot of people feel safe because they're in their own life, they're in their own bubble. But after this, I got to expand and actually think outside of what's just going on in my day-to-day life. Not only what's happening today, yesterday, 67 years ago, but it's still continuing to happen in the future. And with me being as young as I am, and this stuff still happening and has happening, is very, enlightening for me. And seeking knowledge and acting with whatever I can do right now, into changing that and changing the outcome and changing my future, because ultimately it will be left up to me and those, in my generation to continue to hold the torch. So after coming out of this, it's been my realization.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. You guys did a wonderful job. It really pulled on the heartstrings. So major kudos.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Rhonda. I wanted to ask a question. In recent years, we've seen more depictions of, the Emmett Till story. As people trying to get this film made, what were the challenges in people not realizing that there's always different nuances an opportunity to go deeper? And what were some of maybe the pluses of having a bigger spotlight in recent years?
Well, for me, because I've been on this journey for 29 years, unfortunately, in a way, I've been the nucleus to a lot of these projects, Till projects, because I'm connected to them by way of the writer of the book. For instance, of the Emmett Till book, Jeffrey Anderson is a good friend. There's a core of us there that's considered to be Till scholars who knew Mother Mobley, but not to the extent that I knew her. And so over the years, there have been attempts to make this film one way or the other. And so I've assisted in colleagues writing their books on Till, and it ends up biting me in the butt later on because those films are now those books are now optioned and they become competition in a sense. But I always knew we were ahead of the game. I mean, we had the support of Mother Mobley early on because she gave me her life rights. Simeon Wright, who we have not talked about, the late Simeon Wright was our consulting producer on this project. So the family was totally have been involved with the making of this film. The frustration has been, going in and out of meetings and people not wanting to tell the story, and even directors not having the courage to do it. And thank God we found Chenoya, and she was willing to go down this road with us, because anybody would tell you as a filmmaker, this was a project that you didn't want to touch. People wouldn't touch this because they were not afraid of telling the story. They're afraid of messing up the telling of the story. And they didn't want that to hurt anyone and hurt their careers, because this is, this could have went a whole nother way and could have been messed up, right? And we would have messed up the legacy of Till and the telling of the story. But thank God everything fell in place.
That wasn't an option.
Exactly. Because it's crazy. I told people who were, had reservations of us telling the story that I'll retire if it didn't work out. So it was just, there's a lot of pressure. Many people have tried to do this film, from Ron Serling to Steven Spielberg even. It's just been a huge challenge for a lot of people, and we were able to get it done. And so that's a blessing. It's a blessing in disguise. But we had all the tools. I knew everything in terms of my investigations into Till, everything that one should know about the Till case. And all my scholarship is what people have been grabbing and running to tell their stories. And so, patience was the biggest thing on this end, and making sure we had the right team to pull this through, and we were able to do it.
Well, that was the right team. Also, can you just share, Keith, really quickly, the bigger picture in getting justice?
Well, the bigger picture is, thank you, Rhonda. The bigger picture is that, Mother Mobley always said to me, Keith, you must continuously tell Emmett's story until man's consciousness is risen, because only then that would mean justice for Emmett Till. For the longest time, I often wondered what she meant by it, but didn't truly understand, because I was in my early 20s. I'm this young kid being this sponge, and she's telling me this. And later on, of course, I matured into this case tremendously, because it's been a part of me for so long. As an older person, as a wiser person, I now understand what she was saying. And what she was telling me was, no matter how long we fight, how we may even achieve courtroom justice, because she always felt that I was going to be the one to get the case reopened, to make sure justice is done. So that was already laid out for me. But she will always tell me this, because only then, she only felt if we continuously tell Emmett's story, that would mean some sort of justice in this world, because she understood we could not stop the other Emmett Tills from happening. So we're talking about the Breonna Taylors and the George Floyds and Ahmaud Arbery. She always knew that those cases, those legalized lynchings would continue on. But she wanted her story, the story of Till, her story, to be a platform to continue to have these conversations about, where we are in society today, because what we saw in 1955 is no different from what we're seeing today. We're fighting the exact social ills, which is truly amazing, because I never thought in my lifetime I could see history repeat itself, and that's what we're doing. But it's up to us to acknowledge what's happening today, acknowledge that what we're seeing on the streets of America being done to Black and brown people, they're the same as what happened to Emmett Till. They're one and the same. And we should not disconnect the two, because when we just disconnect them, and look at these cases that we're seeing every day as being simply murders or killings, they would call it, we need to call it for what it is. These are legalized lynchings. There's a sense of urgency when you use the word lynching. And that's what they were doing back in 55 with Mother Mobley, where civil rights organizations were questioning if they should get involved or not, because Mother Mobley was calling her son's death a lynching, which is what it was. And so we have this wordplay that's playing on us in today's society that we have to be aware of, but we have to understand that sense of urgency. And I've always said there's no story that speaks more to this generation, political and racial climate, than the story of Emmett Till, because it's a mirror image, what we're seeing today, to what was happening in 1955. And so we're going to continue on fighting for justice, because that was your question. I'm long-winded. Myself and the family and advocates, we're still on the front lines, making sure that justice is done and making sure that everyone who participated in the kidnapping and murder of Emmett Till is held accountable for their actions. That's been my juggling act doing the film productions and TV stuff and telling the story, because that's what she wanted done. She wanted people to be reawakened by the tragedy of Emmett Till, so that justice can prevail.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, really, truly, from my heart. Mamie Till is an icon, and because of this movie, her legacy, her life, her fight, her spirit will live forever. Thank you, AAFCA members, for taking part today in this conversation. And to our audience, on behalf of the world's largest group of Black TV and film critics, we thank you for watching this edition of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.